It was a cold, rainy evening. Thomas, a kind-hearted man in his mid-30s, was driving home from work. The rain was coming down in sheets, and visibility was poor. As he approached a quiet stretch of road, his headlights caught something on the side. Squinting, he realized it was a dog lying motionless on the muddy ground. Thomas pulled over, his heart racing. He grabbed his umbrella and ran to the animal. It was a pregnant dog, barely breathing. Her eyes were half closed, her fur matted and soaked. Thomas felt a lump in his throat. He couldn't leave her there. Carefully, he scooped her into his arms. She whimpered weakly, her body trembling from the cold and exhaustion. Thomas rushed her to the nearest veterinary clinic, ignoring the rain soaking him to the bone. At the clinic, the veterinarian, Dr. Emily, examined the dog. "She's in bad shape," she said gravely. "She's malnourished, dehydrated, and her pregnancy is complicated. But with immediate care, we might save her and the puppies." Thomas nodded without hesitation. "Do whatever it takes. I'll cover the costs." Over the next few hours, Dr. Emily and her team worked tirelessly. Thomas stayed in the waiting room, pacing nervously. He had no idea why he felt such a strong connection to the dog, but he knew he couldn't abandon her. Finally, Dr. Emily emerged. "She's stable for now, but it'll be a tough road ahead. She'll need a lot of care." Thomas sighed with relief. "I'll take her home once she's ready." Little did he know, this decision would change his life forever. 2 days later, Thomas brought the dog home. He named her Hope, a fitting name for a survivor. Hope was still weak, but her eyes showed a spark of life. Thomas set up a cozy corner in his living room with blankets and food. At first, Hope was wary of her new surroundings. She flinched at sudden movements and refused to eat. Thomas spent hours sitting beside her, speaking in soothing tones and offering treats. Slowly, she began to trust him. Over the next few hours, Dr. Emily and her team worked tirelessly. Thomas stayed in the waiting room, pacing nervously. He had no idea why he felt such a strong connection to the dog, but he knew he couldn't abandon her. Finally, Dr. Emily emerged. "She's stable for now, but it'll be a tough road ahead. She'll need a lot of care." Thomas sighed with relief. "I'll take her home once she's ready." Little did he know, this decision would change his life forever. 2 days later, Thomas brought the dog home. He named her Hope, a fitting name for a survivor. Hope was still weak, but her eyes showed a spark of life. Thomas set up a cozy corner in his living room with blankets and food. At first, Hope was wary of her new surroundings. She flinched at sudden movements and refused to eat. Thomas spent hours sitting beside her, speaking in soothing tones and offering treats. Slowly, she began to trust him. For hours, Thomas stayed by Hope's side, encouraging her. She delivered 6 tiny puppies, each one a miracle. Tears filled Thomas's eyes as he watched Hope clean and nuzzle her newborns. Dr. Emily arrived to check on them. "They are all healthy," she said, smiling. "You've done an amazing job, Thomas." Thomas beamed with pride. "It's all Hope. She's incredible." As days turned into weeks, Thomas's home transformed into a nursery. The puppies grew stronger, their playful antics filling the house with joy. Hope was a devoted mother, and Thomas marveled at her resilience. One night, as he watched the puppies tumble over each other, he felt an unshakable bond with them. They were a family now, and while he didn't know what the future held, he knew he'd do anything to protect them. A month later, an unexpected visitor arrived. Thomas was walking Hope and the puppies in the park when a woman approached. She had an air of urgency, her eyes darting to the dogs. "Excuse me," she said, her voice trembling. "Is that dog yours?" Thomas hesitated. "She's under my care." "Why do you ask?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I think she's my dog. Her name is Bella. She went missing months ago." Thomas's heart sank. Could it be true? The woman described a scar on Hope's ear, and when Thomas checked, It matched perfectly. He felt conflicted. The woman, who introduced herself as Sarah, explained that Bella had been stolen from her backyard. She had searched everywhere but eventually gave up, assuming the worst. Thomas felt a mix of emotions. He loved Hope, but he couldn't ignore Sarah's pain. He invited her to his home to see the puppies and discuss what to do. Sarah's reaction to seeing them was heartbreaking and heartwarming all at once. As Sarah spent time with Hope and the puppies, she shared more about Bella's past. But something didn't add up. Bella had never been pregnant before, and Sarah didn't recognize certain behaviors Hope exhibited. Dr. Emily suggested a DNA test to confirm the connection. Thomas agreed, though the idea of losing Hope and the puppies weighed heavily on him. When the results arrived weeks later, they revealed a shocking truth. Hope wasn't Bella. They were two different dogs, but their resemblance was uncanny. Sarah was stunned but relieved that her Bella might still be out there. Hope remained with Thomas, and their bond grew even stronger. But the mystery deepened. Where had Hope come from? And why did it feel like fate had brought them together? Little did Thomas know, this was just the beginning of an incredible journey. One that would defy all logic and leave everyone in awe. Weeks turned into months, and life settled into a new normal for Thomas, Hope, and the puppies. Each puppy had developed a unique personality, and Thomas's days were filled with laughter and chaos. But in quiet moments, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Hope's story. One evening, Thomas received an anonymous letter in his mailbox. The handwriting was elegant but unfamiliar. Inside was a single line. "She is more special than you know." Chills ran down Thomas's spine. Who had sent the letter, and what did they mean? He decided to keep it to himself for now, not wanting to worry anyone. But the mystery gnawed at him. Determined to uncover the truth, Thomas began investigating. He retraced his steps from the night he found Hope, visiting the area again. It was a desolate stretch of road, bordered by woods. As he walked, he noticed something he had missed before, a small, weathered sign partially hidden by overgrown bushes. It read, "Private property, no trespassing." Thomas's curiosity was piqued. He ventured further, careful not to trespass. In the distance, he spotted an abandoned shack. The place had an eerie vibe, but something compelled him to approach. Inside, he found evidence of recent activity, discarded food wrappers, a torn blanket, and what looked like dog collars. A sinking feeling settled in his gut. Could this be where Hope had come from? And if so, what had she endured? Thomas shared his findings with Dr. Emily, who was equally disturbed. "It sounds like a place where animals might have been mistreated or bred illegally," she said. "We should report this." They contacted the authorities, who promised to investigate. Meanwhile, Thomas couldn't stop thinking about the letter. Who had sent it, and how were they connected to Hope? One day, as he walked the puppies in the park, a man approached him. He was older, with kind eyes and a weathered face. "You're the one who saved her," he said softly. Thomas was taken aback. "Do you know Hope?" The man nodded. "She's special, but it's not my story to tell. You'll find out soon enough." Before Thomas could ask more, the man walked away, leaving him with more questions than answers. The investigation into the shack yielded startling results. The authorities discovered evidence of an illegal breeding operation. Dozens of dogs had been rescued, but Hope wasn't among them. It seemed she had escaped long before the raid. Thomas was relieved that justice was being served, but it didn't bring him any closer to understanding Hope's past. He decided to focus on the present, cherishing every moment with her and the puppies. One night, as Thomas sat with Dr. Emily over coffee, they brainstormed ways to learn more. Emily suggested looking into microchip registries. They scanned Hope again, and to their shock, a new ID popped up. It was linked to a facility known for experimental animal research. One crisp autumn morning, Thomas received another letter. This one was longer and more detailed. It revealed that Hope had been part of a special program involving dogs with unique abilities. The letter hinted at experiments, escape, and survival against all odds. The microchip number led them to an underground community of whistleblowers who had worked at the facility. They shared stories of dogs bred for intelligence, resilience, and loyalty, but Hope's name wasn't mentioned. It seemed she was a survivor of a defunct project, a project that had been wiped clean from official records. Thomas was stunned. Could it be true? Was Hope more than just a stray? He shared the letter with Dr. Emily, who was equally shocked. "If this is real, we need to find out more," she said. Together, they embarked on a journey to uncover the truth about Hope's origins. But as they dug deeper, they realized they were uncovering something much bigger than they had ever imagined, something that would change everything. As weeks passed, Hope's health continued to improve. Thomas noticed how closely the puppies clung to her, their little bodies a picture of trust and love. Hope, in turn, became more lively, her eyes shining with a warmth that seemed to grow daily. Thomas and Emily took turns caring for the family. Emily introduced stimulating toys to encourage the puppy's development, while Thomas focused on building Hope's strength. One morning, as Thomas played with the puppies, he realized how much they had become a part of his life. "They're incredible, aren't they?" Emily said one evening as they watched Hope teaching the puppies to explore the yard. "They are," Thomas agreed. "It's amazing how resilient they are, and how much they've taught me about love and trust." One afternoon, Thomas took Hope and the puppies to a nearby park. It was their first outing, and Thomas was nervous. But as soon as they arrived, the puppies began exploring, their curiosity infectious. Hope stayed close, keeping a watchful eye on her brood. As Thomas sat on a bench, an older man approached him. "Beautiful dogs," he remarked. "What breed are they?" Thomas hesitated, unsure how to explain. "They are special," he finally said. The man nodded thoughtfully. "Special indeed. You're lucky to have them." Later, Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that the man knew more than he let on. He decided to be more cautious about where and when he took the dogs out. One evening, Thomas noticed one of the puppies, Luna, acting lethargic. She wasn't eating or playing with her siblings. Alarmed, he called Emily, who rushed over to check on her. "She might have picked up a virus," Emily said. "Let's get her to the vet." The vet ran several tests but found nothing conclusive. "She's stable for now, but keep a close eye on her," the vet advised. Thomas spent the night by Luna's side, coaxing her to drink water and speaking to her softly. By morning, her energy had returned. It was a small scare but reminded Thomas how fragile their lives could be. Emily decided to look deeper into Hope's origins. She contacted a colleague who had connections in animal rescue and genetic research. After a few days, her friend called back with startling news. Hope might have been part of an experimental program, Emily told Thomas. "There's a facility not far from here that was shut down a few years ago for unethical practices. It's possible she escaped from there." Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of experiment?" Emily hesitated. "Genetic modifications, enhancements for behavior, intelligence, and physical abilities." Thomas began noticing peculiar behaviors in Hope and her puppies. One day, as a storm rolled in, Hope herded the puppies indoors moments before lightning struck. It was as if she could sense the danger before it happened. The puppies, too, displayed unusual traits. They seemed to communicate without sound, moving in unison during play. Thomas and Emily couldn't explain it, but the signs were undeniable. These dogs were extraordinary. Emily's research led her to a whistleblower who had worked at the experimental facility. His name was Oliver, and he was hesitant to speak at first. But when Emily explained Hope's situation, he agreed to meet. The experiments were meant to create super canines, Oliver revealed. They wanted animals with heightened intelligence, strength, and loyalty. But the methods were cruel. When the project was exposed, they shut it down and euthanized most of the animals. Emily asked a question that had been haunting Thomas. Why would Hope have been spared? "Some animals escaped during the chaos," Oliver said. "If she survived, she's one of the lucky ones." After speaking with Oliver, Thomas became paranoid. He noticed cars parked near his house and strangers lingering in the neighborhood. Were they watching him? Watching Hope? Thomas decided to install security cameras around his property. He also began taking the dogs out less frequently, worried they might be targeted. Emily, too, felt the weight of their discovery. She urged Thomas to consider moving to a safer location, but he was reluctant to leave the home he had built for Hope and the puppies. One night, Thomas was awakened by Hope's growling. He rushed downstairs to find her standing at the door, her body tense. When he looked outside, he saw shadows moving near the edge of his property. Thomas called the police, but by the time they arrived, the intruders were gone. It was a wake-up call. Hope's instincts were sharper than he had realized. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a protector. Thomas and Emily knew they couldn't keep living in fear. They decided to reach out to an investigative journalist, Lydia, who had exposed the experimental facility years ago. Lydia agreed to help but warned them of the risks. "If they are still looking for Hope, going public might put you in more danger," she said. "But it could also bring attention to what's happening." Thomas and Emily spent days weighing their options. In the end, they decided that the truth needed to be revealed, not just for Hope, but for every animal that had suffered. Lydia published a story about Hope, carefully omitting details that could reveal her location. The article went viral, sparking outrage and calls for accountability. Animal rights organizations rallied behind the story, demanding justice for the animals. While the attention brought hope for change, it also brought renewed threats. Thomas and Emily doubled down on their security measures, knowing that the battle was far from over. But for the first time, they felt they were not alone. The world was watching, and Hope's story was just beginning. Thomas sat at his desk, poring over the notes he had gathered about Project Ascension. Each discovery deepened the mystery. Why had the program been shut down so abruptly? What exactly had Hope been subjected to? More importantly, what abilities might she and her puppies possess that they hadn't yet uncovered? Dr. Emily, equally invested, suggested reaching out to journalists who had reported on the experiments when they were first exposed. Thomas hesitated. Going public could put Hope and the puppies in danger. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that silence wasn't an option. If other animals had suffered or were still suffering, he had to do something. They contacted an investigative journalist, Lydia, who agreed to meet them discreetly. Lydia was intrigued by Hope's story and promised to dig deeper. In return, she asked Thomas and Emily to document every detail of Hope's behavior and abilities. A week later, Lydia called with startling news. The facility where Hope was likely bred wasn't just experimenting on animals. They were developing bio-enhanced traits for search and rescue missions, military applications, and even therapy work. Hope may have escaped just before the program collapsed. Thomas was stunned. "So, she's a product of genetic engineering?" "Possibly," Lydia replied. "But there's more. I've found evidence suggesting that the scientists involved might have deliberately let some animals escape to avoid euthanizing them when the project ended. Hope's survival might not have been an accident." After Lydia's revelations, Thomas began to notice even more remarkable behaviors in Hope and her puppies. One morning, as he prepared their breakfast, he accidentally dropped a jar of peanut butter. Before it could hit the ground, one of the puppies caught it in midair. Thomas stared, slack-jawed. Dr. Emily conducted further tests, this time involving agility and sensory perception. The results were astonishing. The puppies displayed exceptional coordination and an almost telepathic connection with Hope. It was as though they could sense her instructions without her making a sound. Emily shared her findings with Thomas. "These traits are far beyond normal. If the puppies inherited enhanced genetics from Hope, they could be even more extraordinary than she is." But with this revelation came a sobering thought. If the wrong people found out about Hope and her puppies, they could be in serious danger. Thomas and Emily decided to keep their discoveries private until they could ensure the animals' safety. One evening, Thomas returned home to find his front door slightly ajar. His heart pounded as he stepped inside. Hope was growling softly, standing protectively over her puppies. Thomas quickly checked the house. Nothing seemed out of place, but a chilling thought crossed his mind. Someone had been there. He called the police, who found no evidence of forced entry but suggested installing a security system. Over the next few days, Thomas couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He noticed unfamiliar cars parked near his house and strangers lingering in the neighborhood. His fears deepened when Lydia called with a warning. "I've uncovered documents suggesting that remnants of the Project Ascension team are looking for their lost animals. They may know about Hope." Thomas realized that he needed a plan to protect Hope and her puppies. He reached out to Oliver, the whistleblower, for advice. Oliver agreed to help, arranging a safe house in a rural area where Thomas, Hope, and the puppies could stay temporarily. "You need to disappear for a while," Oliver advised. "If they find you, they'll take her." Reluctantly, Thomas packed his belongings and left his home. The move was heartbreaking. He loved his neighborhood and his friends. But protecting Hope was more important. The safe house was secluded, surrounded by woods and far from prying eyes. For the first time in weeks, Thomas felt a sense of peace. Hope and the puppies seemed to thrive in the open space, exploring the forest and playing freely. But even in the safety of the countryside, Thomas remained vigilant. He set up cameras around the property and kept a close watch for any signs of intruders. He knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. Lydia and Oliver continued their investigation, uncovering more about Project Ascension. They discovered a group of former scientists who had opposed the experiments and now worked to expose the truth. Lydia arranged a meeting between Thomas and the group, hoping they could provide guidance. The group, calling themselves the Guardians, explained their mission to ensure that no more animals suffered as Hope had. They believed that publicizing the story was the best way to protect her and others like her. Thomas was torn. Going public could save lives, but it also meant risking Hope's safety. After much deliberation, he agreed to let the Guardians document Hope's story, provided they kept her location secret. The Guardians released a detailed report on Project Ascension, highlighting the ethical violations and suffering it had caused. The story went viral, sparking outrage and calls for accountability. Protests erupted, demanding justice for the animals. Despite the increased attention, Thomas remained in hiding. He feared that the renewed interest in Project Ascension might lead investigators to Hope. But he also felt a sense of hope. Perhaps the public outcry would bring about real change. As the weeks passed, Thomas noticed unusual activity near the safe house. Drones occasionally appeared overhead, and once, he spotted a man with binoculars in the distance. He realized that staying hidden was no longer an option. Oliver suggested relocating to another safe house, but Thomas knew they couldn't keep running forever. It was time to confront their pursuers and ensure Hope's safety once and for all. With the help of the Guardians, Thomas devised a plan to expose anyone still hunting Hope. They set a trap, using false information to lure the pursuers to a decoy location. When the pursuers arrived, they were met by journalists, animal rights activists, and law enforcement. The operation was a success. Several individuals linked to the remnants of Project Ascension were arrested, and their plans to recapture Hope were foiled. For the first time in months, Thomas felt a weight lift from his shoulders. With the threat neutralized, Thomas and Hope returned home. The puppies had grown into strong, intelligent dogs, each one a testament to Hope's resilience. Thomas decided to train them for search and rescue work, ensuring their abilities were used for good. Dr. Emily, who had been with them through every step, helped establish a foundation to support animals affected by similar experiments. The foundation became a beacon of hope, advocating for ethical treatment and the protection of all animals. Years later, Thomas reflected on the journey that had brought him and Hope together. What had started as a simple act of kindness had transformed his life in ways he could never have imagined. Hope and her puppies had not only survived but thrived, leaving a legacy of courage and compassion. The world had changed, 2. Laws were passed to prevent experiments like Project Ascension, and awareness about animal rights grew. Hope became a symbol of resilience, inspiring countless people to fight for justice. As Thomas sat on his porch, watching Hope and her grown puppies play in the yard, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had saved Hope, but in many ways, she had saved him too. This story is not just about Hope and her extraordinary journey. It's a call to all of us to stand up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Animals like Hope deserve our compassion, protection, and advocacy. If this story moved you, consider supporting organizations that fight against animal cruelty and promote ethical treatment. Volunteer, donate, or even share this story to spread awareness. Together, we can create a world where no animal has to suffer in silence. Let's honor Hope's legacy by being the voice for the voiceless. Join the movement today.